Hi all, a very good morning. Just give me 2 minutes, we'll start on. Hi all, a very good morning. So in the last session, we were able to look through at after launching an instance, what are the different properties that each EC2 instance has got, what all can be checked for, like there are different types of status checks, specifically the instance status checks and the system status check. And we also saw what are the basic metrics available as a part of monitoring for an instance. Apart from that, we also learned about few basics of the Linux, which we are going to make use of in the upcoming sessions. And today we are going to learn in detail about security groups. We just learned one rule, one part of the security group, right? So any changes that I make to the security group, the rules are going to take place effect immediately, right? So let's get back to the console here. I'll just open up my I'll quickly log in into my console. There we go. I'll quickly go ahead and navigate into the EC2 section of our course. It's taking a little while to load the screen. Okay, so there we are in our EC2 section. I'll quickly go ahead and launch one of the Linux machines. So I'll pick up this Linux AMI, and I'm going to pick up the T2 micro. In this case, I'm going to leave everything as default. I'm not going to change anything. And just remember, we have something called as enable termination protection, right? So I can change this flag even after the instance is being launched as well, right? So I'll just show you of this, what the termination protection does. And then we are going to pick up our root device volume with 8 GB of size, which is of general purpose SSD type. I'm going to just go ahead and say name security groups lab. I'll go ahead and add it to one of the existing security group, that is web server, which has got HTTP and SSH ports opened up. Right, so it has got HTTP, SSH, RDP as well as the HTTPS ports open. I'll quickly go ahead and use this and go ahead and launch. I'll just re-verify once again if I have this key pair. I don't have any of this. Anyway, let's get created one of them. Okay, there we go. So our instance is getting launched in a little while. So while the instance is being launched here, as we have seen yesterday in the properties, we will be able to see that one of the security group will be tagged to this EC2 instance. And currently the security group which is tagged is basically web server. And if I want to see what all rules are available for this security group, I can just go ahead and click on view inbound rules, and it's going to give me a very neat diagram of helping me to show which port is opened and with the help of which security group. I can also have multiple security groups for one EC2 instance. So I'm going to show you how to attach them. Now, if you see here, port number 80, port number 22, port 3389, port 443 is open to the entire world and is enabled with the help of the security group with the name web server. So let's see if I go ahead and add one more security group to this. How do I do it? It's very simple. Just click on action, click on networking, change security groups, and then I have one more group here. I'll just go ahead and add it here and then say assign. Now if I just go ahead and refresh, yeah, here it is now showing web server and default. Two security groups are part of this EC2 instance. And if I click on inbound rules, You see, it is basically showing that all ports, all protocols are opened up, and the source is basically some security group name itself is given. SG basically stands for security group hyphen, and this is some randomly generated number. So we are going to learn what is that security group about, and this is specifically opened about with the default port, default security group name, and then with the help of web server security group, we have been able to open up the port 80, 22, 3389, and the 443. So the first rule is basically to remember about each instance can be actually tagged to the multiple security groups. So there is no problem with it. We can actually tag multiple security groups to a single EC2 instance. Now we'll go down on the left hand side in the menu bar, and I'm going to open up the security groups part. Here it is in the network and security. I can go and click on it, security groups. So there you go. I just have two security groups here. One of them is a part of web server. Second is basically a part of default. Now in the real time, basically what happens, we actually create multiple security groups and attach it to the EC2 instance. Like in our case, I have web server security group in which inbound rules has got all the RDP, SSH, HTTP and HTTPS, right? So actually when we call it as a web server, we just need to have HTTP and HTTPS ports only as opened up. So let's go ahead and remove a couple of them from here. I'll remove the SSH, I'll remove the RDP, and then save this. Right. So now the web server security group has got appropriate rules which will say that HTTP and HTTPS ports are open to the entire world. Now if I go ahead and create a new security group with my requirement, like let's say we launch Linux instance, so I want SSH port to be opened up. So I'll just say here SSH SG. The same thing I'll put in the description, and here it does ask you which VPC you want to create. VPC is basically virtual private cloud. So we are going to learn about VPC in much more detail. Until then, we are going to make use of the default VPC, which is actually available by the Amazon. In each and every region, there is one default VPC that exists. So whenever you're going to create a new Amazon account, automatically each and every region will have one virtual private cloud, it is VPC, will be created for you in your AWS account. So if there are 15 regions, you will be having 15 VPCs created for you automatically. So I'm going to use the default VPC, which is a part of this North Virginia region, and I'm not going to add any inbound and outbound rules. I'll just go ahead and say create. Now each security group has got basically inbound as well as the outbound. So now when we create a security group for the very first time just with a name, right, we call that as a custom security group. Custom security group means basically we are trying to customize our own security group. I just created with a name. Unwantedly, I didn't put anything in the inbound and outbound to see what happens. Now when I just create a custom security group just with a name, if you see outbound, it says all traffic, all protocols, all ports is allowed to go anywhere, which means from inside anyone can go ahead and reach out to any destination, right? So if this security group is attached to any EC2 instance, that EC2 instance will be able to talk to anywhere in the world because outbound ports are basically allowed, right? So I'll just go ahead and put here And when we talk about the inbound, what happens in this case now? So if you check out the inbound, it says it has no rules, which means no one is allowed to go inside. So it is basically deny all. Right? So whenever the new security group is now attached to any EC2 instance, let's say since we have just launched a Linux server, if I go ahead and attach this SSH security group to the Linux instance and then try to access this, I'll not be able to reach this instance, right, in any of the way, because inbound protocols, no rule is being allowed itself. So it is completely nil. So it will not allow me to go inside this EC2 instance at all. So whether it is a Windows or whether it is a Linux server or whether it is a web server, any kind of virtual machine it is not going to allow me inside, because there is no rule that is being defined on which I'll be able to go inside, right? So inbound is basically all deny, but outbound is basically all allow. So whenever you're going to create a custom security group just with the name, it is basically going to have this inbound rules as deny all, outbound rules as allow all. So that was about the custom security group. Now let's go ahead and add one rule here. So before that, I'll just go ahead and to the instances. I'll pick up the security groups live instance. I'll just say networking, change security groups. I'll remove the default for a while. I'll put it across the SSH and then say assign. So now there are multiple security groups that are attached to this EC2 instance, but let's check out the inbound rules. So if you see, with the help of SSH security group, I do not have any specific port opened up. The port 80 and 443 are basically opened up with the help of web server. Now, if I have to log in inside this EC2 instance, it is going to fail. So let's test it out. Let's fail. If I go with the party terminal, which works basically on the port 22, it is not going to allow me to log in inside. I have to first convert the key pair file. There we go. I will just go and first convert this. I have the partition software here. If you do not find the file, because it usually picks up the .ppk files, just go ahead and say all files and you will be able to see it here. So here is my Virginia keypair.pem, and then I'll just go and say save private key. I'm going to save to the same name, just remove the .pem at the last, and then just go ahead and say save. So it should have been saved now. Let's go ahead and check it out. There we go. So I'm now going to go ahead and pass that ppk file and then try to open it. Let's see what is the error we are getting. Since the port 22 is not opened up, it should not allow me basically. So it is going to say the timed out or the port is not open. Some error it will give it. So it says timed out, right? So basically it was trying to connect to the EC2 instance, but it tried for a certain amount of time and it was not able to do so. So it has basically said it as connection timed out. Is basically timed out. Now what we are going to do is I am specifically going to go back to my instance. And now in this security group, I'm going to go ahead and open up the port number 22 and let's see how fast it's going to take the effect. So I have opened up the SSH security group. So I'm going to go ahead and click on inbound here, and then I'm going to click on edit. So in this, basically we have a lot of different rules, specifically depending upon the situation. Like if I am going to use databases, I can use the security group like Oracle RDS, Postgres, and if it is being used for any of the analytical tools, Redshift is one of them. And if I'm going to use it for, let's say, Active Directory integration, then we can use it as LDAP. If it is for emailing server, then it can use it as HTMP or IMAPS or POP3. So there are a lot of different security groups that are available. So for our case, we are specifically looking for the SSH. Right? So SSH operates at the port number 22. And the good thing is I don't have to remember the port number at all in this case. So if I say SMTP, automatically is going to come at port number 25. If I say HTTP, it is all automatically going to detect port number 80. And if I say LDAP, it is going to detect the 389. Right? So good thing is we don't have to remember the port numbers at all. I just need to select the type of this rule, and automatically the port range and the protocol will automatically come up. And currently I'm going to go and open it for entire world. It is 0.0.0.0.0. If you wish, you can actually go ahead and put the description here. So usually if you are trying to open the SSH security groups, it is always recommended that you open it only to your IP address, or maybe to a set of IP addresses where who are the admins of the this virtual machine, because no one else should basically have the direct access to get inside the machine. Of course, you can use it as a web server which is exposed to entire world, but SSH or the RDP will be opened up only to the certain specific ports. Like here, if I say I can lock it down only to my IP address. So even if I give the key pair and the IP address of this EC2 instance, which is behind here, you guys will not be able to log in on it anymore, right? So I can lock it out specifically in that case. However, for now, I'll just keep it very simple. I'll just say 0.0.0.0 and then just say go ahead and say save. So there we go. Outbound is by default, it is saying all traffic, all protocols, all ports, everything is allowed. So we are not going to touch anything in the outbound. We have just made a change in the inbound rule. Okay, now if I go back to the Putty terminal again and just try to say restart here, let's see what's happening. We'll wait for a little while. Okay, it's still timed out. Let's check the reason here. Okay, we have opened up the SSH port. Again, go back to instances to check out if this security group is attached. Right, so it is now saying that SSH-SC has opened up the port number 22 for the entire world. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just close this part here. I'll reconnect again from the help of IP address. I'll go ahead and pick this up. Leave it on here, SSH auth, and then I'll just pick up the Virginia key pair. I'll also change the appearance so that the font is little clear. So there we go. The moment we have made a change, it is now showing up as verifying to key fingerprint, right? So it is asking me to verify the key fingerprint, and if you are going to trust this host, click yes. I'm sure that this is the correct one. I'll just go ahead and say yes, and then it's going to ask you to log in. So I'll just say EC2-user, and then I'll be able to log in inside the virtual server here. One second, guys. Okay, so we just saw that any changes that we are going to make to security group, the changes are going to take place effect within no time. Maybe there was some problem the last time, I guess, so I'm not sure. So if you want, again, we'll be able to recheck it again. So I'll just go down to security groups. I'll just remove the rule and let's see what it does. Yeah, let's do it. I'll just try to go and say edit. First, I'll remove it. Okay, let's first remove it and then I'll just put it as my IP and then do it. So first I'm going to remove it and then I'll just go ahead and say duplicate session. So it's basically going to create the same copy of this. Right, so it is going to be timed out. There we go, right? It has been timed out. Now, as we said, let's try out with my IP address. I'm just going to go ahead and pick up the rule, say edit, and then I'm going to pick it up as SSH. And then I'll just lock it down to my IP address so that no one else will be able to log in. And let's go ahead and say save. There we go. Right, so it is allowing me to log in, and if I say easy to have a user, it will allow me to go ahead and get inside the server. So even if I give you the IP address as well as the key pair for this EC2 instance, you guys will not be able to log in because it is specifically logged down to my IP address. So if I try to log in into this server from maybe let's say my mobile device, which is connected to some other internet, so it will have a different IP address and it will not be able to connect through. Right, so that is the way we will be able to set up the security. So the second point I'm going to go and put it here is group. Okay, so we have one more query here. So if it is not connecting through my IP, then what NAT action needs to be done? Yeah, so specifically what happens is there might be some troublesome situations that might come across these days because most of the IP vendors are basically trying to convert their IPs to IPv6. So if I go to CMD here in my computer and if I say IP config, so before that, if you were checking out the IP config, you were able to see the IP address, right? If you see, I'm not able to see any IP address in this box. It is there, but if you see, it is going to provide me with a IPv6. So these days, a lot of companies are actually migrating from the IPv4 to the IPv6. So you may check out if your internet vendor is still on IPv4 or IPv6. So IPv6 is a new way of getting through connected to the internet. Why we are using IPv6? Now what happened is IPv4 was a good solution with a lot of IP addresses, but now since everyone is going to have internet in the upcoming days, people are unable to manage with this set of IP addresses. So each IP vendor like Airtel, Vodafone, Sifi, Tata, and others, they are basically trying to migrate everything to the IPv6 as per the internet standards. So if there is some problem, that could be one of them, but usually it should not cause because Amazon automatically detects what is your IP address internally, right? So even though I was not able to see what is my IPv4 address, Amazon automatically detects it. However, I'll be able to only see the IPv6 address from here. Now the possible causes whenever you think you are not able to connect to your EC2 instance is, first thing, just go down to the EC2 instance, check out if the correct key pair is So in this case, my key pair is basically Virginia key pair, right? So first thing is to check out whether you have downloaded the correct key pair to your machine and have you converted it to PPK file correctly. Point number one. Second, check out the security group is correctly tagged to the EC2 instance and that security group has the port open from which you are trying to connect to it. Right. So these are the two major things that you basically need to check out while you're trying to connect to an EC2 instance. Okay, now coming back to security groups again. Now, if you see, as I told you, each region here, right, specifically North Virginia, we are in, each region has got a default VPC created by for us, right? So in each region, as I said, default VPC is being created. So whenever you go ahead and launch any EC2 instance as well, so it is basically also going to have a default security group by itself, right? So let's go ahead and check out what are the rules which are defined in the security group. Anymore, I would say just you may need to check if you already have that public IP address enabled or not in case if you're unable to connect through it, right? So always ensure that the public IP address is being enabled, this one. So each instance will have public IP address and the private IP address. So you specifically need a public IP address in order to connect it from the internet. So there are three things: public IP address, security groups, and then the key pair. So these are the three major things to be checked out if in case you are unable to connect to the EC2 instance. Yeah, so we were discussing about the default security group. So now if I go to any region, automatically as the default VPC is available, I'll also have a default security group available. So let's go ahead and check out what are the rules in the default security group. This is really important to know because sometimes when you go down to the interview, they do ask about, do you know anything about default security group? What are the inbound rules available? What are the outbound rules available as a part of default security group? So let's go inside the default security group here. So in the default security group, if you see, this is the inbound and it says all traffic, all ports, all protocols. Now, if you see, there is some source here, right? So if you see it, it says SG, that is security group hyphen 91E250EA. So from where did it derive this name? Now, if you see, the name of the security group is also the same one, SG hyphen 91E250EA. This is the name of the security group itself. So in the inbound rules, basically it has got all the traffic, all the protocols, all the range of port is being allowed, but the source is basically the same security group, which means if I have two EC2 instances which are being launched with the default security group, then they both can talk to each other because they have the same security group attached, right? From outside the world, I'll not be able to connect it because that source is not opened up, but it is basically opened up to itself. So right, so if I have one EC2 instance like this, I have one more here, and both of them are basically, let's say, tagged to let's create it like this. So both of them are basically tagged to the default security group. Now why I have put security group like this in this case here, it is because it says the source is the same one, or let's say I'll just put it across like this here. This is a security group, and now this is basically tagged to both of the EC2 instances. Now if I define this as a layer of internet, let's say from here outside, from here we are able to actually, if you want to connect, we are here actually, okay? So these are the people across the world who are trying to connect across, but they do not have any direct access to this instances because there is no port opened up. The ports are opened up only for this security group itself to talk. So if traffic wants to diverge from here to here, it can easily do it because it says if the traffic is coming from this port, this source, allow it, right? So I'll be able to go out and talk between the two different servers internally, but from outside the world, I'll not be able to connect it. So that is how the default security group is set up. So I'll just go ahead and put it in the notepad. So here is my custom security group. I'll just go ahead and copy this part. I'll just click here. And then I'll just make it as a default here. Allow all, but same security group. Right? Now let's go ahead and check out what is there in the outbound. In the outbound, it is basically allowing everyone to go out to any destination. So that's not a problem. So again, that is allow all. So 4 important things to be remembered in terms of security group. Instance can be tagged to the multiple security groups. And now let's say if there are multiple instances, can I tag one security group web server to the multiple instances? Yes, we will be able to tag it across. So I just can go ahead and I just need to go down to the instances. So here I can have multiple instances which can be having all the different security groups. Like for this, we have security groups tagged as web server and SSH. Similarly, if I have one more EC2 instance, I can just go down to actions, click on networking and change security groups, and then I'll be able to add the again same security groups which the first instance is having. So instance can be tagged to multiple security groups, as well as security group can be tagged to multiple instances. Yes, inbound is basically the input, outbound is basically the output. So inbound is basically from where I can go inside. Outbound is basically from where I can go outside. And remember, any changes which are made to security group, effect is going to take place immediately. It is not going to wait for some time to reflect. Nothing happens as such. It is very immediate. And when we talk about the custom security group, that is basically something that we are creating. The outbound is basically all allow, inbound is basically all deny. But when we check out the default security group, inbound, outbound, both are allow all. But remember, in the default security group, the inbound is allowed only to the same security group itself. Right? So that is the major difference. So any questions here on the security group part of the lab? Okay. So we'll just make a move to the next part of the topic. So we now know how to launch an instance, how to control the security for a specific EC2 instance, and now we are going to learn how to launch a Windows instance. We have not seen how to launch a Windows instance, right? Shiva, Divya? Okay. So we'll see how do we launch a Windows instance, how can we log in inside it, what can we do with it as well, right? So let's quickly get started with it. So I'll go back to my console here. I'll close this EC2 instance for a while. I'll just terminate it. So remember, the next rule important in your practice session would be whenever you launch instance, if you're done with your labs, just go ahead and clean up The cleanup activity is really important. So if I'm trying to use North Virginia region, stick to one region itself, because if you're going to launch in multiple different regions, then you will get confused where my instance was launched, did I ever really close it, and suddenly at the end of the month you might see that there is some charges. Of course, as a part of free tier, we have 30 GB of space as a free, and 750 hours of EC2 instances for free. But now that we are going to launch a Windows instance, the Windows instance itself requires 30 GB of space for the hard disk. So it really becomes difficult to track the situations in that case. So always remember, just stick to any one region. So if you're going to use use North Virginia across. If you're going to use Ireland across. If you're going to use Singapore across your complete labs. If you're going to use Asia Pacific Mumbai, try to use Asia Pacific Mumbai overall. And remember, once the lab part is done, just go ahead and click on instance states and say terminate. It is going to release back this virtual machine to the Amazon. Okay, so that cleanup activity is really important. In case if you're not sure, just come down the dashboard and see what all is available. It says currently I do not have any running instances, 0 IPs, dedicated host is zero snapshots and one volume. So if there's one volume, let's check out from where it has been come up. So I got this is just related to the EC2 instance which we just deleted across, right? Yeah, so it was attached to some security groups lab EC2 instance which has been deleted currently. So this volume is going to get deleted in a little while. So always ensure that everything is zero in this case, apart from the key pairs and security groups. You're not going to be costed for that, but always try to see that you do the cleanup appropriately. Okay. So now let's come back to the instances. I'll click on, if you guys are in India, then specifically Mumbai will be recommended, or if you are in some other location, specifically just try to reach out to any nearest location that is to you, right? So that will be helpful. It's okay to do the lab anywhere, but specifically if you want to not have any latency issues, because sometimes it does happen that because North Virginia is in US, I'm sitting in Bangalore, sometimes it does happen that I will have some latency issues because all the way my interconnection has to go through the underground cables from Bangalore all the way to the US. So it will take a lot of time. So specifically it is recommended that you try to do the labs in the nearest region. That's fine, you can do it anywhere provided you have a better internet connection. Okay, so now that our instance is terminated, let's go ahead and launch a new one. So in this case, now we are going to go ahead and launch our Windows machines. Before we go ahead and launch a Windows machine, I'll just like to give you an overview here. So quick start, just I guess we actually had a look yesterday. There are 4 different types in which we can select the AMI. So either first is a quick start, second is if you have your own machine images, and you can go to the marketplace to find out the third-party companies who have launched their machine images, and you can go to the community AMIs where people have created their AMIs and they are put it publicly available. So I'm going to use quick start for now, and I'm going to say free tier only. I'll go down a little. Here the Microsoft Windows starts off, so I can select either Microsoft Server 2016 base, or I also have few more in MS Office and Microsoft Windows. So along with the containers, along with the base nano or R12, R2, 2012 R2 base or 2012 base, we can select any one of them. Let's go ahead and select the first one, that is 2016 base. I just click on select. And then it is going to ask me whether you are going to go for a free tier. I'll say yes. With the 1 virtual core of CPU, 1 GB of RAM, I'm going to go ahead and launch this. So in the step number 3, it is basically asking me how many instances I would like to launch, which network it is going to be a part of, and whether you would like to have auto ascend public IP. Yes, I need an auto ascend public IP because I want to get it. I want to connect from the outside world. Now, recently in last reinvent, just 1 week back, this domain join directory has been come across, right? So if you are already having a company with more than 10,000 users, and if you have your own active directory, you can actually bind your active directory to the EC2 instance so that you don't have to remember the usernames like EC2-user. You can specifically actually use your company's ID and the password in order to log in inside this EC2 instance. Right, so that's really cool feature that has recently come up. So domain join can be directly done from here. Currently, I do not have any directories that are being configured onto the AWS at this moment of time. So I'll just leave this blank. I'll just go ahead and click on add storage. And then we are going to use off all 30 GB. So if you're going to reduce this size from 30 to let's say 25, this is going to fail off, right? So it is not going to launch the machine at all. So Windows requires minimum of 30 GB whenever you're going to launch an EC2 instance. That is the reason Amazon is actually giving free tier of 30 GB, right? Whether you go for general purpose SSD or whether you go for a magnetic, you will be able to get 30 GB of space. And if you are going to launch a Windows machine, all the 30 GB is being utilized at one shot, right? So remember this, whenever you're going to launch a Windows instance, it is going to occupy a space of 30 GB for the root volume. And the name of the device will come with /dev/sda1. So we are going to discuss about the names of the device in the upcoming labs. That's fine if you don't remember for a while. You will be able to get acquainted with it. And it is general purpose SSD drive because it is faster. If you want, you can go for a magnetic standard as well. But if you go for provisioned IOPS, you will be basically charged across because we are going to get only general purpose SSD or magnetic storage as a free. So I'll use general purpose SSD. And remember, whenever I'm going to terminate, automatically my root volume is automatically going to get terminated as well because the delete on termination flag is checked out here. And encryption, for any root volume, the encryption is not possible. So we have to use third-party tools like BitLocker in order to encrypt the root volume. I'll just go ahead and say next, add tags. I'll go ahead and add the tag here. I'll just say name, my Windows machine. And now, basically, in order to connect to Windows, what do? Basically, we have a remote desktop, right? It is RDP, we call it as remote desktop, right? So RDP is a short form for the remote desktop. So specifically, we need a security group that has RDP with the port number 3389 opened up for us. So currently we do not have any, right? So if I go ahead and select the existing security group, I just have SSH and the web server security group. So I just need to go ahead and create a new security group in this case. So I'll just say Windows SG. In the description again, I'm going to put it the same Windows SG, and I'm going to create a new security group here, which has got RDP rule with the port number 3389 opened up for the entire world. I'll just go ahead and say review and launch, and then I'm going to go ahead and launch this. So again, it is going to ask me for a key pair, even though it is a Windows machine. So I'll have to go ahead and select a key pair here. So I'm going to use the key pair that is Virginia key pair, which we just created today in our labs, and I'm just going to go ahead and launch this instance. So there we go. We have been successfully able to launch the instance. Since this is a Windows instance, it's going to take a little while. Since this is a Windows instance, as I said, it would take a little while. So we'll just wait for some time for this instance to come back. So while this instance is being launched, I'll be back in a minute. So even though the Windows instance is up and running here, sometimes it might take a little while. So how do we check it whether it is up or not? It's very simple. Just go ahead and click on my Windows instance here. Click on connect. Now we all know whenever we are going to do a remote desktop, I basically require the IP address or a DNS name, and then the user ID will be administrator, and then I require a password. But in this case, as we know, Amazon follows the methodology of key pair. How do I get the password? It's very simple. I'll just click on get password. It's going to ask me to send the key pair to Amazon, and then it's going to help me with the password. Let's go ahead and click on file here. So I'll just go back. So you have to pass the PEM file, not the PPK. Remember, it's a PEM file. So I'll just pass the PEM. Here it says you need to pass this key pair in order to get the password. And then I'll just click on decrypt. So there we go. I got a password which is so long. I'll just go ahead and copy this. And then I'll put it across in the notepad here. So this is my IP address, or you can also use the direct IP address like what we get 52, 54, 86, 171, or you can also use the DNS name. It's up to us. I'll just use a DNS name for a while. All I have to do is click on this Windows button, try to find out the remote desktop app, which will be already there in all of the computers. Just click on that. It's going to ask you for the IP address here. So I'll go ahead and put the one here. Click on connect. Then it's going to ask me for the ID password. I'll use the more choices. I'll say use different account, and then I'll be able to give the username as administrator. And it's going to ask me for a password. It's really difficult to remember this one. I'll just go ahead and copy this. And then say okay. So if everything goes well, it is going to ask you to verify the certificate. So in the Linux machine, it asks you to verify the key fingerprint. Here it is asking you to verify the certificate. I'll just say yes. So there we go. We are now successfully able to log in into our Windows servers. So Windows takes a little while to set it up itself. Yes, no. So there we go. I'll be able to see the properties of my instance directly here. It says this is the host name, this is the instance ID, this is the public IP address, this is the private IP address. The size of this machine is T2 micro, which is with one virtual core of CPU and 1 GB of RAM. And currently it is launched in US East 1C. Remember, the North Virginia has got 6 availability zones, and this is a part of the 3rd availability zone. And the architecture we are using is AMD 64, and totally one memory of 1 GB of memory is there inside this system, right? So in order to connect to a Windows system, we do not require a PuTTY terminal. PuTTY terminal is specifically used in order to get inside a Linux machines. And in order to log in into a Windows machine, we basically require remote desktop to be available. So this is how basically I'll be able to log in inside of the Windows instance. And again, the things will be same. I'll be able to go ahead and if I remove the port 3389, I'll not be able to log in through, because it is basically the way I connect to my this one. So any questions here on the Windows instance launch? From anyone of you, any questions here? Okay, so we have one question. There are two options to connect RDP and WebGUI. Any other way to connect to the Windows box? No. There are only those ways, I guess. Apart from that, we'll not be able to connect it in any other ways. Any more questions before we move to the next part of our topic? So the next part we are going to learn is about the bootstrap script. Before that, let's go ahead and just terminate this EC2 instance. Okay, just before terminating, I would just like to show you the So I just wanted to show you the Windows Explorer here. So if you click on this Windows Explorer button, it will basically display you the hard disk size. It might be a little slow here. So if I go down to this PC, you will be able to see that there is a one drive with the size of 30 GB, but 16 GB is only amount of space which is available as a free. So 14 GB is basically occupied by the operating system itself, and still it will not allow you to launch any Windows machine with less than size of 30 GB EBS volume. Right, so remember, you always need to have a EBS volume of 30 GB in size, and as a part of our free tier we only get 30 GB itself. So if you're planning to launch a Windows instance, you will be not able to launch any instance in the part of free tier anymore. So that was the only thing I just wanted to show in here. Yeah, so next part of our lab is about bootstrap script. Now what is bootstrap? Bootstrap is specifically something as a script that is going to run for the very first time. So the system is going to get launched for the very first time. If I want to go ahead and pre-install some things immediately, right, without logging into the system, I'll be able to do so. So in the yesterday's lab, we just saw how to convert our normal EC2 instance Linux machine into a web server. We installed Apache, we tried to configure our home page, and then we were able to make it as a web server. So today we are going to see, without logging inside the EC2 instance, can we automate all of them? Let's go ahead and pick it up. So I'm going to go ahead and launch an EC2 instance here. Just a sec, I just confirm that it is switched off. It's still running. So while this is going to terminate, let's put down the steps in the meantime. So yesterday, if you remember, the first thing that we did once we log in inside a Linux machine is elevate our privileges, right? Sudo su is basically a command to elevate our privileges. Then we tried to update all the security patches. So what is the command? Yum update -y is the command which helps us to update all the security patches for our VM. And then we learned how to install a new software. So we were specifically trying to install the Apache web server, that is yum install httpd -y. Why do we give -y? So that if there are any dependencies for this specific software to be installed, all the dependencies automatically get installed. It doesn't wait for a manual input from user. So first step is elevating the privileges, then updating all the security patches, and then trying to install a software. Now once the software is installed, where do I go ahead and configure the home page for this Apache software that is called as HTTPD? It is at specifically this directory, that is /var/www/html. Right. So this is the path where Apache basically looks out for the configuration of web pages. Right. So we are going to create our web pages inside this place. Once we go inside, how we created the files, we used the nano as an editor, and then we created index.html file, and inside that HTML file, what did we put? I just put it as HTML h1 as a header tag, and then I said this is my first web page from the AWS cloud. And then I'll just close the header tag and the HTML tag, and then we saved this file with the index.html name. So once the file is saved, after that what did I do? And remember, how do we save this file? It is Ctrl+X and then letter Y and then the enter key. Thus this will actually save the file. And then after that, what did we do? We basically went ahead and started the Apache service. How do we start it? I just need to say service, and the name of service is HTTPD. And how do I start it? I just need to go ahead and say start command. So this is basically going to start the service. Now, if I want to automate all of these things while the instance is being launched for the very first time, right? So there are some things that I'll not be able to do, right? If I'm a human user and if I go inside a machine, I'll be able to use nano, but if it has to automatically happen, how is it going to get this command Ctrl+X+Y and enter? I will not be able to understand. So I'm going to change few commands which are required as a part of bootstrap script. So I'll just go down to here. Now instead of sudo su to elevate the privileges, I'll specifically use this one, shebang/bin/bash. So specifically what I'm trying to do here, so shebang is basically the interpreter, that is hash and the exclamatory mark together are called as shebang. So shebang/bin/bash. Now whatever commands I'm going to execute is at a root level. Bin is basically a root level for the Linux boxes. So I'm going to execute all the commands at a root level, that is at bin, and using the below bash script. So in Linux machines, we basically write bash scripts, and in Windows machine, we basically write the PowerShell scripts. So we are basically dealing with the Linux VM here. So I'm going to write the scripts in the bash script. And then I'll just say yum update -y. This will remain same. Yum install httpd -y. This is going to remain the same. cd is basically change directory. So I'm going to change the directory from var www/html. So I'm going to go until here. Now, of course, I'll not be able to use nano, so I'll have to find out some alternative for this. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to use the echo command. Echo command basically is going to help me out here. So I'll just copy this part. I'll put it inside the inverted commas. So this basically line is being echoed out, and I'm going to use this greater than symbol, which is going to help me to write to a file with the name index.html. That's it. So this index.html file will now be created under this directory with the name HTML, right? So I am inside this path, that is var www/html, and inside this directory of HTML I am trying to create the file with the name index.html. So how do I create it? I am basically using the echo command, and echo command basically is going to echo out this one specific line, and I'm going to directly save this file inside this index.html file. So I'll just go ahead and remove this part, or I'll just put it here. So whatever lines are being removed, I'll just go and keep it on the top. And then finally, I'm going to start the Apache service, that is service httpd start. Now there's one more line I would like to add here, that is chk config, that is check configuration httpd on. Now what does this line do? This line is basically always going to check if Apache web server is running or not. So let's say sometimes it does happen that due to some new installation the Apache service might have been stopped, or let's say I have restarted my system and the Apache service is stopped. So how do I ensure that it is always up and running? I need to just give this command that says check configuration of Apache, that it is whether it is running or not. So it is always going to keep a check if the Apache is up or not, right? So the command is very simple, check config httpd on. Now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this entire contents, and now I'm going to go ahead and launch a new instance. Again, I'm going to select only free tier part, and in this case I'm going to select Amazon Linux. And I'm going to select the general purpose T2 micro. I'll go ahead and click on configure instance details. So in this case, I'm just going to scroll down to the entire page down, and you see the advanced details. That is the place where we can actually put our bootstrap script. So it is basically called as user data field, where I'm going to go ahead and put my bootstrap script. So I'll just paste it here. Again, reviewing back, shipang/bin/bash is going to elevate my privileges. Yum update -y is going to basically update all the security patches. Yum install httpd -y is going to install the Apache software, and I'm going to change my directory to the var www/html, and then I'm going to create one new file with the name index.html, and then we are going to basically start the Apache service, and then we are going to ensure that the Apache service is always up and running. Remember, bootstrap is nothing but the very first time the EC2 instance is going to launch, very first time, not when I restart it, but the very first time it is going to launch, that is when this script is going to get executed. So I'll just go ahead and say add storage, and then I just go ahead and say I would require the root device volume of 8 GB size, the general purpose SSD drive. I'll go ahead and say add tags. I'll just go ahead and put it here. Name my bootstrap lab. I'll go to the security groups. I'm going to select the existing security group. So I have SSH for the port number 22, and I have web server for the port number 80 and port number 443. So currently I'm not going to log in inside this server. Anyway, just for our safety security, I'm going to attach the SSH group as well. And then I'll go to review and launch. And then I'm going to quickly launch this using one of the key pair. So I'm going to use the Virginia key pair and then say launch instance. So there we go, our instance is launched. So I'm not going to log in inside the instance anymore, and just see that this EC2 instance is going to get converted to web server automatically, and I'll be able to log in into it directly. So I'll just wait for this. So I have already got the IP address. I'll just keep it handy. So once it comes in a running mode, I'll be able to view the updates. I'll just keep it ready here. So there we go, it is in running mode. So initially, the moment it is running mode, it might be executing that bootstrap script. So it may take just a couple of more seconds. So let's go ahead and check out. Right, so it's not responding. So it is still trying to install the things. So we'll wait for a little more time for the instance to start up. So there we go. Right. So now it displays. This is my first web page from the AWS cloud. So this is how the Bootstrap script can actually help me to save a lot of time. So if I have to go inside the instance, write each of the command and try to execute it, it may take a little while. At least I might waste for 3 to 4 minutes or maybe some 5 minutes at time. So if it is a huge Bootstrap script, you can just imagine how much time it is going to take. This is very simple Bootstrap that I have written. Sometimes it may be a little complicated one, which has got a lot of things to be involved in the Bootstrap. Now, why do we use Bootstrap? So in order to get the system ready, while the very first time it is going to get launched, I'm going to go put the things across into the Bootstrap itself. So if there are some services that I want to get started running, like if you remember, whenever your Windows system is going to start up for the very first time, let me see if I'll be able to open it up. A little bit, not completely, a little bit of scripting might be required to know, but these are all common commands that you will be able to learn through. So a little bit of Linux administration or Windows administration, choose any one of them that you want to learn across. So specifically, we are going to deal more with the Linux part in this case. So if you are already using a Windows computer or a laptop, if you just go and Windows R, if you click on your laptop, you have one Windows button. If you see and click on Windows plus R, then you are going to get this run box. Just go ahead and type ms config and you're going to see this box. So in this box, it basically shows how the system is going to start up. It is going to be a normal startup for my Windows computer, and it says during the boot what should happen. So it is basically going to get the Windows 10. I can also have multiple operating systems here, and these are the services that are automatically getting started. If you see here, the Acrobat service is already running. There's one other service like Windows Audio is running, Audio Endpoint is running. So in the startup, there are some services. Yeah, here it is showing, right? So these all services are basically getting started automatically whenever my Windows is getting started. So if there are some services that you would like to basically launch while the server is launched up, right? Specifically, like we want to install the Apache server, I want to start the Apache service and ensure that the Apache service is always up and running, right? So if I want to configure those kind of things, then the Bootstrap script is the something that can actually help me to automate the job work. So any questions here from any one of you on the part of Bootstrap lab? Okay, then so we'll close the part of the session here itself today, and we are going to explore a few more things in the next part that we are going to learn about. So next we are going to learn is, I'll just shift the AMI a little down. Yeah, so the next part of our lab, we are going to start with the volumes and the snapshots, and then we are going to learn what is instance metadata. We are going to learn what is placement groups. We are also going to learn how to use the IAM user and the role with the EC2 instances, and then the command line, and then we'll come down to the AMI part as well. So there are a lot of topics in the EC2. EC2 is one of the longest section in the complete course that we are going to do through, because it is the backbone of the complete AWS. So it is going to take a little while for the EC2 instance, EC2 section to get completed. So any questions or queries? Okay, no worries. I'll just check with them once again as well. Or if you can just drop in an email ID, I'll just share those PPTs along with you guys. Yeah, any more questions or doubts before we close for the day? Okay. Thanks all. Have a great day, and we'll meet back again tomorrow at the same time in the morning to continue to the next part of our EC2 section.